911 location of your emergency.
All units, we have a report of an active shooter at the supermarket on Missouri Avenue. Suspect is armed with an assault rifle.
Hello, I would like to welcome you to another episode of Reclassify 911, a podcast dedicated to seeing that our 911 public safety dispatchers are properly reclassified as the first responders they truly are. While elected officials in Washington, D.C. have not been able to pass such legislation, thankfully, states across the nation are starting to take the steps necessary to see that these men and women are finally reclassified as they should be. The states you see on this map have passed legislation or are in the process of recognizing 911 public safety dispatchers for their true profession, first responders, and not that of administrative support or a clerical position as so classified by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, who has refused thus far to do as many other states, counties, and cities are already doing across this nation. Sadly, even my own state of Missouri has yet to pass such legislation, and not one of our U.S. Missouri representatives in Washington, D.C. has signed on as a co-sponsor to H.R. Bill 2351. This is a bill introduced last month by California Congresswoman Norma Torres, which would reclassify our 911 dispatchers at the federal level. Now, as I stated just a moment ago, many states, counties, and municipalities are stepping up and recognizing these men and women. One of the most recent counties is from the state of Delaware, and that is New Castle County. On April 16th, County Executive Matthew Meyer signed Executive Order number 2021-02, which stated, emergency telecommunicators in New Castle County be defined as first responders, first state, first county, first family, first responders. Well, I am excited to have both the County Executive Matthew Meyer and the Chief of Emergency Communications, Jeffrey Miller, with us today. I would like to thank you both for taking the time to be here today. And with that being said, would you both please start off by introducing yourselves, maybe a little bit about your career, and what got you both and New Castle County to the point of the executive order that was recently signed?
Executive, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Chief Miller. My name is Matt Meyer. I'm the New Castle County Executive. I have run for office twice in my life. The first time was 5 years ago when I ran for County Executive of New Castle County, and the second time was for re-election last year. New Castle County has about 60% of the population of the state of Delaware. It's one of the only counties in the country where a single county has a majority of the population. Paul, to be honest, and Chief Miller, I'm sorry, but when I was elected, I knew precious little about 911, about emergency communications. I like to say it's a little bit like when you go to the supermarket, you expect food to be on the shelves. When you go to the gas station, you expect gas to be in the pumps. And when you call 911, you expect someone to answer the phone quickly. It's kind of something that you just expect to happen. I realized once I came into office, schooled in large part by Chief Miller, of everything that had to go into making an effective 911 response. And that 911 response, I have learned, really starts with a quick response from the 911 operator, a quick, smart response. So, I've had time doing what we call a ride along, sitting next to 911 operators. And if anyone out there has not done it, I encourage you to do it. It was like going to a foreign country. The language that they use and the speed at which they operate and the emotional intensity that it takes going from one call to the next, both call takers and dispatchers was inspiring. So, Chief Miller.
Thank you, County Executive Myers. So I'm Jeff Miller. I am the Chief of Emergency Communications. I started my career with Newcastle County in 1989. I transitioned for a short period of time into a part-time position, but I have been with the county for 22 consecutive years now. I have served in the capacity of an emergency call operator, police dispatcher, fire and EMS dispatcher. I implemented our quality assurance program that is still in play today and has grown immensely since when I began being the one guy working the regular shift and doing QA at the same time. And then I had the opportunity to become the assistant chief and eventually chief about 7 years ago. And luckily, the county executive still likes the work that we're doing, and I can hopefully remain chief through the rest of his tenure. But I also have a unique experience that I bring to the table is, and I didn't realize this till just the other day, that I'm celebrating my 39th year right now. And in June, I will begin my 40th year with the Tallahassee Volunteer Fire Company in northern Wilmington, Delaware. And during those 40 years, I've served in many capacities, including fire chief for about 7 years, and been in charge of fireground operations for excess of 18 to 20 years. And I'm currently serving as the president. I served as through the board, through the Mideast chapter of APCO. And I think that's where I got my first introduction to the drive to push to get OMB to recognize our first responders, our true first responders. And we know that they are our call operators and our dispatchers who answer that phone call and get everything to start happening. And if we don't do it right in the beginning, the whole train's going to go off the wrong track. So I think I bring a perspective of not only the years in service in 911, seeing how we've progressed, seeing how we provide post dispatch and pre-arrival instructions that truly do save lives. And we'll probably highlight this in Newcastle County, but if you are going to have a cardiac event, you should do it in Newcastle County, because we have a great survivor rate here in Newcastle County. And when we recognize, and our EMS division, our paramedics team up once a year, and they introduce the team that saved that person's life, they always include the dispatcher and or the 911 call operator who began those pre-arrival life instructions. So we get to see upwards of 8, 9, maybe even 10 a year of our people getting recognized. They're the ones that truly get recognized, that we are answering phone calls quickly, we're providing pre-arrival instructions, and we are that first responder that has that positive impact and a great outcome.
Well, Chief, you made the comment I do a lot of times. I even did it when I was chief of police, that I truly believe our 911 dispatchers are the true first responders. So I appreciate that. On a side note, I think you're going to make my deputy director very happy, because my deputy director comes from the fire side and was a fire chief himself. So I know he'll be happy to hear that. And Mr. Meyer, you made one comment I wish a whole lot more people in your position would do. And that's how you said what you say, ride along or sit in, whatever it's called. I wish more would do that to give a better understanding. And in fact, the dispatcher I interviewed last week said those exact same words. So I thank you for saying those. My next question, you actually confirmed part of it, because I was going to say, I believe that your county accounts for 60% of your population, and you did say that. Having the largest of 3 counties in your state, was that population issue a driving force in getting the first responder executive order issued in your county? And if not, what was that driving force that really pushed for you to issue that order, sir?
Well, first, we have, because we're 60%, we're the largest local government. A lot of the things that we do are the largest in the state, the largest budget. And I do expect each of our department leaders to play a leading role in sort of setting the standard for the state. This initially, I think, Chief Miller, you mentioned it, and it also came to my attention from some of the 911 employees who wanted to do it. There's a national movement. I think there's a bill pending in Washington regarding identifying, emergency communicators as first responders. And I thought it's very important, as Chief Miller mentioned, for as long as I've been county executive, and I think before then, we've included our emergency communicators as equal partners and at times leading partners in a emergency response. And so it's important we do that. It's important that emergency communicators know when we stand up and say first responders, we're talking about them.
Thank you. For either one of you, for those in other states, and for me, primarily Missouri, because that's what I'm really pushing for, but across the nation, for those that may be reluctant to get on board with making dispatchers first responders, what concerns do you think they may still have in not taking the steps like you did?
If I could go first on that one, I believe that the largest question, and since I got involved, I want to say around 2017, I was still director with Mideast chapter of APCO, being the immediate past president, attending the 911 goes to Washington, going to the House to the Capitol to plea our case before it went to get voted on in 2019, I believe. It's money. Everywhere I go, even in Legislative Hall here in Delaware, how much is this going to cost us? What is the alternative? What are the negatives? And when I look at it as someone who's been in this profession for years and someone who has the ability to lead and make change, I don't see any financial impact. And to be quite honest with you, we have their county executive who has, always championed everything we try to spearhead. Normally, when we start something in the 911 system in Delaware, it starts right here in Newcastle County. And I can tell you the day after the county executive, I was out of town at the time, but the day after the county executive signed that piece of paper and created that executive order, the other two counties were, blowing my phone up. Hey, what'd you do? How'd this happen? And what's it cost? And I said, a piece of parchment paper and a blue pen. And literally, that's what it costs. And if we can get that message out to everyone, and I know Congressman Torres, she has championed this House or this Senate bill to get passed. She comes from the 911 system, so she understands it. And she has so many, I've lost track of the number of co-sponsors that are on there now. It just doesn't make any sense that we're all not doing it. And I would be shocked if Newcastle County, if the other two counties in Delaware didn't have this implemented within the next 2 to 3 months. But I believe if there's anywhere or any way that the governor could just sign it into state law or state code, I believe that'll happen maybe even faster than the other two counties get it done.
And I agree with you on that. I know that Norma Torres from California is doing a very good efforts to try to get that 911 Saves Act passed. I believe that's HR 2351 or 2341. And I agree with you. There's, I think, 50 of the representatives from across the nation that are already on that bill as co-signers. I'm trying very hard to get hopefully at least one of our Missouri ones on there. They're not on there yet, but I am working on that. And as we may have hit on just a little bit ago, Newcastle County is, of course, one of 3 counties in your state. And right now, the only one that has designated dispatchers as first responders. And it sounds like what you just said, Chief, it may not be a whole lot that needs to be done. But are there any strategies that you are trying to do to win over those other counties to get that across the state? Or what strategies would you recommend to pass on to other people in your and my position or the elected or appointed officials?
As Chief Miller mentioned, the primary concern I get from other elected officials is what's the cost of doing this? And as far as we can tell, the cost is minimal to nothing. Well, not nothing, a piece of parchment paper and a pen, as Chief Miller said. So one thing is just addressing that concern. I think there's an ongoing concern in terms of cost that now anything you do for paramedics, for fire, for police, you'll almost be required to do for emergency communicators. And my argument is you should, quite frankly, we should be treating them the same because their job's a little bit different, because they're largely in a room at a desk all day in front of a computer. They are treated differently, but it's important to know that their jobs, I think our pension here is 30 years now. So by and large, they're spending 30 years. Some of our recent retirees are spending closer to 40 years doing this. And they need recognition as the heroes that they are, the thousands of lives, literally thousands of lives that they save in our communities. And it's important that that happens across the country.
Well, thank you on that, sir. I really appreciate that. And I know that this signing, just I believe April 16th, you just signed that executive order. So it is fairly recent for the reclassification. But Chief, have you seen any noticeable change, whether it be in your morale or decrease in turnover since the change or since that signing?
So I wish I could say decrease in turnover, but that would not be realistic in a short period of time. But I can tell you, walking into the room, and this is, a week after Telecommunicators Week is over. So I don't want to say we're done celebrating, but we're done, sharing that week and time together. The room is ecstatic. You can just see that they have their faces have lit up and there's hope. And the true definition of the first responder has to include your telecommunicators. And let's face it, two of our largest educational processes and places that certify and give us accreditation, we'll say APCO, NINA, and Priority Dispatch. They're the three biggest, and there's some others out there. But at the end of the day, they were fighting over almost 20 years ago who first coined the first responder. I mean, they actually went to court over that, and there was an out-of-court settlement because someone wanted to claim that fame that we coined our 911 telecommunicators, first responder, and that was 20 some years ago. So it's just time to give them the recognition, that they deserve. And as you heard the county executive allude to a 30-year retirement, if you work 30 years at a 12-hour shift, you're 38 years into this, but compared to a normal working shift by the time you hit 30. So you've already exceeded your 30 years when you get there. And it's a tough job. And that's where I take my fire chief's hat. I try to always leave it at the door. And I try not to compare my experiences as being fire chief, but I've learned along the way that what our telecommunicators provide is just as stressful as the firefighter pulling up to something that the unknown, the police officer pulling up to the unknown, the paramedic with the child in the bathtub. I mean, there's just so many different versions that you could challenge, and the fire service could come back and say, well, you're not a field responder. No, we're not. We're not out there in the field all of the time, but we are some of the time. We're still a first responder. We're providing life-saving instructions. we're providing scene safety instructions, and we're gathering information to secure the safety of our field responders. And some of us do have the job, and we do here in Newcastle County. We provide 2 field communication vehicles that do go out into the field and assist or become a support role, not only in emergency management, but to our police department, our undercover units, and our fire and our EMS divisions.
Very well explained. Do you, kind of expanding on that question a little bit, Chief, do you see this reclassification helping in the areas of hopefully assisting with the reducing the historical changes that we have seen over the years in our 911 centers?
I believe it's going to have a positive impact along the way. That, again, there's too many people out there today that don't understand the system and how it works. But as the county executive alluded to in the beginning of the conversation, it's like going to the grocery store. You expect it to be there. You pick your phone up, you dial 911, and you expect it to be there. And if you get a busy signal, if it takes 10 or 15 rings, you're upset, and you're calling your county executive or your county representative to find out, why did this not work instantaneously and immediately for me? Where I believe across the nation, 6,000 plus 911 centers, we're doing the job and we're doing it right. And we need to give our employees the recognition necessary. And that is when you will see your turnover rates reduce.
Very good point. Well, Mr. Meyer, one thing that I do love asking elected officials, appointed officials across this nation is, what is your response when you hear somebody say that dispatchers are just glorified operators and anyone can answer a phone? I don't know, maybe if you've heard that or not. I know I've heard it a lot over my career. Any comment on that, Mr. Meyer?
So I actually have personal experience. I mentioned I did a ride along sitting next to a call taker and a dispatcher. I also went to the chief. We have a citizens 911 academy where that Chief Miller created, where citizens can come in and see what 911 operators do. It's actually been a great tool of recruitment. A lot of people see it and they say, oh, I want to do that. And I thought, I'm cool and I'm smart. And so I didn't take the course. And there's an exam at the end that Chief Miller said is sort of the easiest of the easy. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's not the most challenging exam. Anyone who's a 911 communicator can ace it. And so I said, give it to me. I'll take it. And I failed. I didn't go to a single class. I thought, oh, I can do this. And I failed, and I wasn't close. So all I can tell you is that there's a serious expertise there. If you spend 3 minutes sitting next to one of these emergency communicators and see what they do every day, it's not just the expertise and the training. It's also a certain emotional constitution. You have often hysterical people on the other end of the line in the most critical moment of their life. For the emergency communicator, years later, those with amazing memories can remember specific calls. But I'm sure if I asked Chief Miller to tell me about every single call he's ever taken as an emergency communicator, he probably can't do that. But I bet you if I asked the other person on the line who was calling to tell me about that time, they can tell me nearly every word of what happened. So there's serious expertise there. And I hope that more across the country recognize that by recognizing them as first responders.
Well, thank you on that. Chief, having ending my law enforcement career as a chief myself, of course, as you understand, I still have several contacts with chiefs, both police and fire, throughout my career. And sadly, a lot of other chiefs don't seem to understand the reasoning or justification for this reclassification. what would you say to other chiefs or other people in our positions to hopefully sway their opinion to educate them?
Well, I won't say retire. I was going to. But anyway, what I would say is that the process has changed. And I don't know a lot of people that are police chiefs for a year or two. You're usually police chief for quite some time. And you've worked for the department for probably a minimum 15 to 20 years before you got to this department. Or maybe you did retire and you came to this department and you already have 30 years in as a police officer. As our county executive did, and as you've heard him say, the most important part that stuck with him, understanding what it is that we do in our communication center, was he took the time. He took the time to come in and sit, and he didn't just sit with the call operator and say, oh, I know everything now. He stayed in each spot for probably 2 hours. He worked as a call taker, a fire medical dispatcher, and a police dispatcher. I believe he even got to dispatch a call or two over the air, and did a phenomenal job at doing that.
They weren't listening to me till I said, they gave me a call sign and I said, hey, this is CE1. And suddenly everybody was paying attention.
Right.
I was going to say, nice way to throw in an attaboy for your boss there, Chief.
Yeah, right.
Gotta help.
I take them. I take what I can get in this job, Paul.
But at the end of the day, that is the answer. Sit in that 911 center. And I go do it myself. You have to be in the center to know what's going on today. As I've been chief for 7 years, and I've caused a lot of change here. New CAD, new phone system. You know, I've taken their accelerator and put it on the left side of the car so many times they're tired of hearing about the next greatest widget that's going to make their job easier. But you got to be in the room to see, you know, what it is today. And in today's world and the amount of responsibility that I think most telecommunicators have, like they didn't 30 years ago, is you weren't dealing with 5 or 6 patrol cars or 1 or 2 calls after midnight at night for the fire and EMS system. You're dealing with all day long, solid, rocking, all day long with phones ringing.
Yeah.
With issues.
And that's a really good point, Chief Miller. You know, Paul, if you think about what emergency response was like 40, 50 years ago, I spent some time as a diplomat in Iraq, and I saw a glimpse of the emergency system there. And they're similar to here, I think 40, 50 years ago. Ambulances are transport. They're just moving people, getting people as quickly as possible to a hospital where they can actually get the medical expertise and assistance. Of course, over the course of decades, what's happened is I like to say our ambulances, our paramedic response is effectively a mobile hospital unit where they have equipment there that's not that, and expertise that's not that different than the emergency room. And then also, if you think of call takers, what they were doing 40, 50 years ago, literally was just taking a call and sending someone from place to place. Now it's effectively part of the emergency response. From the moment they pick up, they're getting someone. That call taker has medical training and has training in how to do effectively what we call now telemedicine. We're incorporating video into it now. You add apps like PulsePoint, right, where you get medical expertise that are in the vicinity using technology to get on site. You find even pre-paramedic, even before the BLS or ALS, basic life support or advanced life support, is showing up on scene, there's already some medical response. And obviously our emergency communicators are an absolutely critical part of that.
Well, I will commend you, Mr. Meyer. You were definitely educated. I think sitting in that PSAP has definitely done you very well, because I love hearing how you're talking about the responsibilities of this center, or any center for that aspect, and the requirements of the dispatchers and the equipment they have to deal with. Is there anything else that you could potentially want to add that may help other elected representatives, appointed county executives, whether appointed or elected, and even city managers that may help them to understand the importance of recognizing their 911 dispatchers as first responders?
Look, one reason I think this is really important is that when someone's life is saved or there's a traumatic event and there are heroes that show up to save someone, the victim, the victim's family, the neighbors, who do they recognize? They recognize the police officer as they should. They recognize the paramedic as they should. They recognize the member of the volunteer fire, the fire service, the firemen, the ambulance driver, people that showed up. They see them. They're there in front of them. They very rarely get a chance to recognize the person who they were on the phone with, maybe for 5, 10, 15 seconds, maybe 90 seconds, and then the call was transferred, and they never know who that person is. They don't know what they look like. They have no idea how critical this person was. So not only are they the first responders, but they're the most hidden. And we as leaders have an obligation, we have a responsibility to bring them out into the open so that they can be recognized for the heroic work that they do.
Well, I thank you for those wonderful words, Mr. Meyer. As we wrap up this interview today, I'd just like to turn it over if there's any additional comments that either one of you would like to say that may help with the reclassification of our dispatchers, not only here in Missouri, but the other states as well who are lagging behind those that have already done that.
I think the hardest sell is that it doesn't cost any money. And at the end of the day, we've proven that. Probably the best partnership that was created giving this idea to the county executive was between management and the union. And so if you're a union shop and you can get your union president to walk in, and we were lucky that the time that we had the conversation, which wasn't long, it might have been even less than 18 minutes, but it was myself, the county executive and his team, and the president of the union as well. And if you can get them, and like I said, we had just completed arbitration, so we have a collective bargaining agreement signed off on that's good for 3 more years. And you have a president sitting there saying, we're not looking for money, we're looking for recognition. And that's a good confirmation too. If you can bring your union with you to your legislative hall, your council people, or whoever your powers to be are, and make it look like you've created a team of people that have done the research, they've come up with the right solution, and now they're giving you a recommendation. Just like any other piece of legislation you're ever going to pass, you have a team of people working on it. You're going to run it through law, which our county did as well. And everything came back clean and says, this is the right thing to do. And we don't see anywhere where it's going to cost us any grief, further down the road. Just be upfront from the very beginning and come as a team. And literally, I think the county executives agree with me. I think we might have been on the phone for 16 minutes that day, and or a Zoom meeting, and he determined that this was the right thing to do.
Chief, we can check the call logs and see how long the call.
Sure.
Well, to both of you again, I truly thank you for your time. I'm very happy that you've done what you did for the dispatchers in your county. I hope that in the near future I can be sending you a message and said, hey, it passed in Missouri, we're moving forward. But more importantly, I truly thank you for your time today. I know you're both really busy, and congratulations on the wonderful step that you guys have made.
Thank you, Paul. Also to you, it takes heroes to recognize heroes. We appreciate your years and years of service in the police department, and also now more broadly for public safety, advocating for this really important issue for first responders in your county, in Missouri, and really across the country. So thanks for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, I have to echo as well. Anything you need in assistance, other than just doing this, you just let us know, and we'll reach out and help you out where we can.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. Momentum is growing across this nation to reclassify these men and women as first responders. While the 911 Saves Act has not advanced in Washington, D.C. as we would like to see, that is not the case with the rest of the United States. As I have stated at the beginning of this episode, cities, counties, and states are starting to step up and do what is needed. We are even starting to see actors from some of our favorite television shows recognizing these men and women for what they do. One such actor is Rob Lowe, who plays Captain Strand on 911 Lone Star. Take a listen to what he said on this short video that was recently circulating on social media.
Hi, I'm Rob Lowe, and I play Captain Owen Strand on 911 Lone Star. I want to take a minute to thank all of the courageous men and women that man our nation's 911 call centers. They answer over 240 million calls a year. And every call that comes in could be a matter of life and death. And it's up to them to get the help and support to the people who are needing help and support in some of the worst times in their lives. So my great gratitude to all of you who man those call centers. God bless 911.
We hope to see momentum like this continue to grow, and that states across the nation will step up and reclassify our 911 dispatchers. We hope to see that the 911 Saves Act will pass in Washington, D.C., reclassifying these men and women at the federal level. And we hope to see you again next week on another episode of Reclassify 911.